Chapter 5 Flower. In this study, we're gonna study about the part of flower, type of flower, and also the species of flower type. So let's begin with the part of flower or the flower composition. Normally, the flower composed of four main structures. First is sepal, second is petal, third is stamen, and the fourth is pistil. The sepal is the green portion of flower, which are the outermost layer or the outermost portion. The sepal can help plant cover the whole path of the flower when they are at the flower bud stage. For the petal is the next part or the second part of the flower. Petal usually colorful because this character can be used to attract pollinator for pollination. And the next part is the third hold. It is the stamen. Stamen composed of anther and filament. The anther is where plant or is where pollen grains produced. So the stamen is the male reproductive organ. The fourth part is pistil. Pistil is the innermost part or the innermost portion of the flower. It is the female reproductive organ. Pistil composed of stigma, style, and ovary. This is the four main part. Moreover, the flower stalk we call pedicel, and the receptacle is one of the pedicels or flower stalk where every part attached to. Sometimes we call the whole of the four portion is calyx, corolla, androecium, or gynoecium. Calyx is the portion of sepal or the holes, the third hole. Calyx usually green, and it is the outermost wall of flower consisting of separate or few sepal. The corolla is the collective unit of the petal. And androecium is the third hole of a flower made up of male reproductive unit. This is the stamen or the portion of stamen we call androecium. And for the pistils, the part of female reproductive portion as well as the innermost hole in the flower we call gynoecium or gynoecium. For the petal, the number of petals are vary depend on species or depend on plant, and the number of the petals are different between monocot and dicot. In monocot, the number of petals are usually 3 or multiple of 3, maybe 3, 6, or 9. But in dicot, the number of petals are usually 4 or 5 or multiple 4 or 5. It can be 5 or 10 or 15, something like that. In some plants, the sepal and the petal cannot easily be classified as either sepal or petal. We call this term is perianth or tibble. This may be because the part of the perianth are undifferentiated. This is the structure of perianth. You can see that you cannot separate sepal and petal. So we call this is tibble or perianth. In some flowers, such as in crinum lily, the perianth develop like a tube, so we call this is perianth tube or furrowed tube. It is also the petal, but it's the shape look like a tube. So there are two parts, the tube and the petal. And you can see the color is quite green and white, so you cannot separate the sepal and petal. We call this is typal or perianth. For the stamen, as you know, the stamen is the reproductive part of the flower. Stamen composed of anther and filament. This is the anther and this is the filament. And this picture shows you the cross sections of the anther. Anther usually composed of 2 or 4 anther sacs. This is the anther sac or anther locule. Inside the anther, there are developing pollen grains. When the flower blooming or when they are shedding, the anther layer will split and the pollen grain will migrate. So inside this, from this picture, this is the pollen grains. And this is the close-up picture of the pistil. Pistil is the female reproductive part of the flower that composed of stigma, style, and ovary. Stigma. At the surface of stigma, it can be wet or dry, depending on species. This is the place that the pollen grain landing and germinate the tube inside the style. The tube will go inside the style to release the sperm cell to the egg cell in the ovary. So the ovary will be then developed into fruit. Sometimes we call the pistil or the female organ is carpel. So carpel and pistil is the same meaning, and also composed of stigma, style, and ovary. This picture shows you the evolution of the carpel. Normally, carpel is believed that it comes from the modified leaf. According to one theory, the carpel begins as a modified leaf with sporangia. Here, this is the leaf and the sporangia attached to the edge of the leaf or to the margin of the leaf. And this is the modified leaf-like structure. And then, in the course of the evolution, the leaf edge curled inward and finally fused together. When they fused, it means they make one carpel. So at the end of the sequence, 3 carpels have fused to form a 3-chamber ovary. This is 1 chamber and this is 3 chamber. If 3 modified leaf-like structure fold inward and fuse together, it means that this is the 3 carpel. There are 3 main types of gynoecium. The first type is the syncarpus or the fused carpel. One flower usually have more than 1 carpel and they are fused together. So we call this is syncarpus. But if only one flower having only 1 carpel, we call monocarpus. If one flower composed of many carpel but they are not fused, we call apocarpus. So this is 3 fusion of gynoecium. The first monocarpus, second apocarpus, and the third syncarpus. So let's guess what is the gynoecium type of this flower. This is the sepal, the green one. Next to the sepal is the receptacle. Here is the receptacle. And the white one is petal. Next to the white one is the stamen. Here is the stamen. And inside the innermost part is stigma. Is petals. So you can see there is so many pistil axis on the receptacle and they are not fused each other. So this is apocarpus. And this is also an example of apocarpus. This is the tipole or the perianth. They cannot be easily separated between sepal and petal, so we call perianth. Next to the perianth is the stamen. Here is the stamen. And this is the gynoecium. And you can see that there are several stigma. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the ovary are not filled. The pistils are not filled each other. So this is the apocarpus pistil. Let's go to the type of the flower. There are many types of flower depending on the criteria. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 criteria for separating the type of flower. The first type of flower is characterized by number of the flower on the peduncle. If on the peduncle composed of only one flower, we call solitary flower. The meaning of solitary is like a lonely flower or simple flower. This is the same meaning. But the second type is inflorescence. Inflorescence is a group or cluster of flowers that are arranged on a stem and composed of a main branches or system of branches. This is the inflorescence. If you separate it by floral part or floral composition, it can be separated into two types, complete flower and incomplete flower. The complete flower is a flower that have all four floral parts. They have sepal, petal, stamen, and pistil. But for the incomplete flower, it means that the flower are missing any of its part in its natural form. From this picture, they lack pistil. They have sepal, petal, stamen, but they don't have pistil. So this is incomplete flower. But if we separate it by the sexual part only, it can be separated into two types. The perfect flower. The perfect flower is the flower composed of both stamen and pistil. Stamen and pistil are in the same flower. But if they are separate flower, we call imperfect flower. This is the female flower. Sorry, this is the male flower and this is the female flower. And this is the example which show you the composition and the two type of flower. The perfect flower, you can see that they have sepal, petal, and here this is the stamen and pistil. But for the imperfect flower, there are two types of flower, male flower and female flower. So male flower cannot produce fruit, but female flower can produce fruit. This is how to recognize in the laboratory. And we can also use the position of ovary to separate flower type into three types. The first is hypogynous flower. Hypogynous flower is a flower having superior ovary. The superior ovary are an ovary that attach to the receptacle. This is the receptacle. And the ovary are attached on or above the receptacle. And the ovary are above all the floral parts. But the inferior ovary or the epigynous flower, which means the flower having inferior ovary. The inferior ovary lie below the attach of outer floral part. This is outer floral part and this is the inferior ovary. For the epigynous flower usually have sepal, petal, and stamen around the edge of a hypanthium. Hypanthium is a cup-like receptacle. So the polygynous flower usually have hypanthium. Hypanthium is the cup-like receptacle, and we call the ovary lie along the edge of the hypanthium. We call half inferior ovary. The next criteria is about the floral symmetry. If we consider the floral using the floral symmetry, it can be separated into radial symmetry and bilateral symmetry. What is the radial symmetry? The radial symmetry is mean that we can the floral or the flower that can be divided into two matching half by many different lines. It can be this line, or this line. We call this the radial symmetry or actinomorphic or regular flower. This is the same meaning. But in some flower, you can see that in some flower, they cannot be separated into two parts with many lines like in radial symmetry. This is the bilateral symmetry. The bilateral symmetry is the condition in which the right or left side of an item are mirror image of one another. So they can separate it only one time by only one line like this. As we previously mentioned about the first type of flower that we separated by the number on the peduncle, simple flower and inflorescence. We will separate the type of inflorescence into many types. And now we're going to start about how many types of the inflorescence. At first, we'll recognize two types of inflorescence, racemose type and cymose type. So how do we know which one is racemose and which one is cymose type? Can you get from this picture or from this diagram? So the racemose type is the flower that are arranged in a cropetal manner, which means that the older flowers are present at the base. The bigger one is the older one. The older flowers are at the base, while the younger are present toward the top. This is the younger. This is the racemose type. For the cymose type, it's different. It is in the opposite type because the racemose have order at the base. Cymose will have order flower at the top or in the middle, but the younger will be at the base. So this is how different between racemose type and cymose type. And there are many types of racemose. Let's start with the first type. The first type is the general character of racemose type, or we call raceme. Raceme is when flower with pedicel, this is the pedicel, are arranged in a cropetal manner like this. This is the older one and this is the youngest one. And the length of the pedicel are also different. But if the floret or the pedicel having different length like this, the length of pedicel of the flower is more than the length of pedicel of upper one. So that all flower come at the same level. Raceme, the flower are not at the same level, but corymb, the flower will be at the same level. This is corymb. In case of some flower that they don't have any stalk or don't have any pedicels, and they arrange in an acropetal manner like in raceme, but they don't have pedicel, we call these type a spike. The spike sometimes look like catkin. So what is a catkin? Catkin is a kind modified spike with a long and drooping axis. But catkin different from spike because catkin usually have unisexual flower. Sometimes it is all male flower or all female flower, so they separate the sex. So this is how different between spike and catkin. In some plant, like in some Araceae family, they have spike that covered by spathe. So we call this type of inflorescence as spadic. So the sporadic is the spike inflorescence having spat. This is the sporadic type. For the umbelled look like corymbs because the level of the flower are at the same level, but how different? You can see that every pedicel comes from the same point. It's different from the column because the column they have the different in length of the pedicel, and the pedicel that don't come from the same point like in umbel. It looks like an umbel. And the last one is head. Head is a raceme in which the peduncle is flat and the flowers are attached directly to the peduncle. Here is the peduncle, and this is the floret. And the floret usually have short stalk or short pedicel, or usually don't have pedicel. This is head. The head is the general character of many plants in sunflower family. For the zymose type, there are two types of the zymose type, depend on the number of the younger flower. If the zymose type composed of the older one and only one floret that younger, only one size, we call monoecium. But if the zymose type or the inflorescence having the oldest one in the middle and the oldest one are besides by the two or a pair of younger floret, we call dicacium. And there are two types of the monoecium, depend on the arrangement on the axis. The first one is the helicoidal. Helicoidal is also monoecium that the fluorescence has lateral flower developing on the alternate sides of the axis and often appear like a coil, like this. And the second one is also the monoecium we call scopioid psalm. The scopioid psalm is that its axis is curved and has lateral branches alternately on both sides of the axis, like this. We call this is the scopioid monoecium or scopioid psalm. And this is the summary. The diagram shows you the summary of the racemose type inflorescence and the zymose type inflorescence. And the last topic is the special flower type. The first type is the papilionaceous flower that we usually found in the pea flower because the flower look like butterfly. The papilionaceous flower are the flower with the irregular flower that have bilateral symmetry, and the corolla consisting of 5 petals. The first one is a single large upper petal that we call banner. This is banner. And the other two smaller and equal lateral we call wings. The two key petals are fused at the base or stuck together to form a boat-shaped structure that includes the essential flower organ. So this is the boat-shaped structure of the petal we call queue. So 5 petals, 1 banner, 2 wings, and 2 queue. Moreover, the stamens are quite distinct from the other type. There are 10 stamens, but 2 groups of stamens. The first one is the 9 stamens. The 9 stamens are fused by the filament, leaving only single stamen that does not fuse with the rest of the stamen. And here this is the calyx. So we call this character is papilionaceous flower. And the second species flower type is gladflower. Gladflower is a non-showy floret that contains a bunch of spillet as inflorescence. So the inflorescence type is spillet. But the spillet, actually there are 3 spillet, but the two lateral spilets are reduced, leaving only the spilet in the middle. And the spilet in the middle, they don't have sepal and petal because the sepal and petal are reduced. But they have lemma and palea. Lemma and palea is the two bract-like structure that partially or fully enclose the inner part. So the female and the male structure are covered by lemma and palea. This is how special they are. And the last one is the sunflower. If you know the sunflower, you think that the type of flower should be single flower, but this is actually the inflorescence. Even it looks like a simple flower. It is inflorescence in the head type. The head flower. This is the receptacle, and there are so many flowers lining on the receptacle. In the sunflower type, it is more special because there are two types of flower on the receptacle. The first one is the dead flower. The dead flower is the perfect flower located in the center. And the dead flower are surrounded by the ray flower. Ray flowers are usually imperfect and they are usually the female flower, but they have showy petal. In the dead flower, they also have petal, but is it not showy like in the ray flower? So this is the main character of sunflower type. And here is an example of the sunflower type composed of this flower and ray flower.